everyone. Welcome to the Pathways to Happiness podcast. My name is Nina Lavon, and today I am responding to a topic request that I've gotten several times over the last week, and I think it's something that many of us can relate to, which is how to set boundaries with negative people that bring you down and drain your energy, and also how to spot what we call an energy vampire. It's funny because whenever I use this term, it seems like someone specific comes to mind for everyone. And maybe you are in a situation where you are dealing with this type of toxic person right now. So I want to try to share some tried and true techniques for navigating through these situations and for taking care of ourselves and our own needs in the process. I want to hop into the topic as quickly as possible, but as always, I need to quickly thank you all for your amazing support, both here and on the Nina Lavon YouTube channel. If you have not yet subscribed, please take a moment to do so. Share if you know others who might benefit from this type of content, and do not hesitate to reach out and request specific topics. I will give all my contact information at the end, just in case you don't have it. And that being said, let's get straight into today's topic. So have you ever noticed that many times when people just enter a room, you can immediately feel their energy? And sometimes it's a positive energy that makes us feel good and is calming and even soothing. And it's really wonderful when that happens. But there's also those times when we immediately notice a negative energy that makes us feel anxious and kind of on edge. Some people use the term energy vampires to describe these people, and I actually think that's the perfect name for it because they absolutely drain you when you spend time with them. Now, I don't know about you, but I can absolutely feel people's energy right away, and when they have that kind of negative vibe to them, I am immediately on alert. And because of the type of person I am, I also find myself trying to figure out what it is about them that is making me feel that way, and also pinpoint why they might be like that in the first place. But I definitely do notice, and I'm willing to guess that this is something that most of us experience. But hopefully, in a lot of these situations, they happen with people that we're never really going to see again, or that we can choose to not see again if we decide that our hunches are right. But sometimes negative people are people that we have relationships with. Maybe they are coworkers or family members, but they are people that we can't simply opt not to see for the most part. And maybe they are even people that we deeply care about, but still we dread seeing them because we know that they are going to completely squash our mood. Or maybe we feel too guilty to let ourselves admit that we dread seeing them. So we always make excuses to ourselves about them or their behavior because we don't like feeling that way about them. And it can actually be very complicated and confusing in these cases because we really feel many emotions at the same time. And these emotions can be in direct conflict with one another. Something fundamental that we have to understand, however, is that in a healthy relationship of any kind, there's going to be a giving and a receiving that is happening on both ends. Both people are going to leave the interaction feeling positive about it most of the time. We may even feel invigorated or energized, but we have a sense that we are looking forward to the next time we see that person. Now, of course, there are exceptions, but I'm just saying as a general rule, they are adding to our life and we are adding to theirs. So if there is an equation, there's really an equal sign in between it. But with an energy vampire, there is a negative for one side and a positive for the other. So either they are stealing from us emotionally or dumping their negative emotions on us, so they walk away with a positive because, believe it or not, they are gaining from the situation. And of course, when that happens, we walk away with a negative. Our equation is negative. So let me give you some specific examples of energy vampires, because sometimes we get so used to being around them that we can't even spot the signs anymore. We have grown accustomed to the behavior, so it doesn't ring any bells for us anymore. But that doesn't mean that it's not affecting us. In fact, I can assure you that it is. But when we are numb to it, we may not even notice that the behavior is even toxic anymore. So, firstly, there are people that are intentional with this behavior, and others who are just so sincerely miserable and unhappy that it leaks out. And there are still others that are simply very needy and they have no understanding of boundaries. So, in a nutshell, an energy vampire is someone that leaves us feeling overwhelmed or exhausted because they have drained all our emotional energy. And I want to be clear that we're not talking about a person that is not acting like themselves because they are going through something difficult or they are having a bad day. It would be unrealistic and completely unfair to demand people always be upbeat and optimistic and use their energy to build us up no matter what is going on in their lives. Everybody needs to voice frustration now and again, and there is absolutely nothing that is wrong with that. We don't want to force people to act positively when they are not feeling that way. And there is a big difference between venting every once in a while and constantly dumping our frustrations and irritations and annoyances and bad days and negative feelings on others, whether or not they want to hear about it. So again, we're not really talking about specific situations or difficult times. We are talking about predictable patterns of behavior that are toxic and are undeniably having a negative effect on us and our emotional well-being if we don't know how to set up effective boundaries or have effective coping strategies. So let's go ahead and talk about some clear signs of a true energy vampire. Keep in mind, however, that it is unlikely that the same person is going to check all of these boxes, but it's likely if they are an energy vampire, they will check quite a few. Now, the first one is that they are constantly blaming other people for their problems. So everything that's going wrong in their life is the result of someone else. It's someone else's fault. They are often always involved in some type of drama, either self-created drama or they are just making a big deal about everything, but the drama definitely seems to follow them. They often diminish your problems and play up their own problems. So even if you are going through something in your life, it's like what you are going through doesn't really matter because whatever they are going through is just so much worse. So they are going to make their problems seem much bigger than yours. And they always tend to one up you. So they don't want to be outdone, so they just put themselves in the spotlight. So it's almost like they have a narcissistic tendency in this case, but they're always trying to one up you. Sometimes they are codependent. So if you're not really familiar with codependency, it's kind of a type of relationship where every action is calculated or designed to elicit a certain reaction from another person. So oftentimes the energy vampires are indeed codependent. A sign that is extremely common is criticizing everything. They can just find a problem with everything. They are judging people and their lives and their behavior. They feel like they do things better and they are wiser and smarter or more righteous, but they tend to criticize everything. Another thing is they use guilt trips or ultimatums to get what they want. So they don't know how to really, in a respectful manner, try to get the outcome that they want. So they use emotional manipulation And a lot of times that emotional manipulation has to do with shame or guilt. They will use it as a weapon, especially against people who are very caring and compassionate, because it is very effective. I know for me, guilt trips are the worst. That is the worst form of manipulation because I am weak towards it. I have always worked towards being assertive, but when people make me feel guilty, that's often something that I have difficulty with. So that's something that an energy vampire can definitely sense out. And if it works out for them, if they get what they want in the end, they'll tend to use that same type of emotional manipulation. Another common thing is for them to take everything personally, for them to make everything about them, to look way too deeply into something and just assume that it was meant to harm them or to provoke them in some way. So they just take everything, very personally and oftentimes in completely the wrong way. A very clear sign of an energy vampire is that they lack boundaries. And this is simply because they have that intrusive energy that we feel. They are very pushy. They are very needy. They don't really understand social cues or social etiquette a lot of times. And they also tend not to be able to take no for an answer. So, whereas normally when someone gets a no, they back off, someone that is an energy vampire may still try to push the situation. They may continue to try to nag you until they get what they want. Another thing that can happen is that they feel that everybody else is wrong except them. And that is really annoying because they are failing to respect other people's intellect or opinions or perceptions of situations. They just think that there are black and white answers to everything. And of course, however they feel about something, that is the correct answer. That is the one and only right way. They often try to belittle you, and this can be very subtle sometimes, or sometimes it can be extremely obvious, but they want to let you know that they feel that they are superior. Another telltale sign is being cynical or being sarcastic in a dark way. Now, I love sarcasm. I am sarcastic a lot myself. I think it's really funny. I like when people are sarcastic with me, when there is a positive and, benign motivation behind it. But when it is that cynicism that is underneath it, the sarcasm is so dark and it is like a dagger that goes through you. You can just feel that person's misery. They are often always complaining because they are pretty much always negative, or the experiences that we have are always negative. They never seem to be content. They always feel that there's something they need to complain about. So when we are constantly with someone that is viewing the glass as half empty, that is so exhausting. And of course, they are never going to bring up any positive points of a situation. They're always going to keep harping on the negative. So again, it just completely drains us. Another thing that I have noticed with these type of people is that they tend to be very passive aggressive. Now, I have a video about passive aggression if that's something that you aren't familiar with, but it's kind of like they sugarcoat something negative. But when people are passive aggressive, you definitely feel it. And a lot of times they want you to feel it. They want you to know that they are not being sincere. And that is something that is also very draining and also very emotionally immature. When we are with energy vampires, we feel a lot of times that we are walking on eggshells around that person, or that we need to walk on eggshells because we are really waiting for the other shoe to drop. We're waiting for this dramatic reaction to occur, and we are trying to avoid it. So we aren't even able to be authentic. We have to be careful with our words. We have to be careful with what we share, and even with the emotions that we are putting forth. Another thing that I see a lot is that they may do you a favor, but they definitely make it known that they are doing you a favor, or that they are doing something just to please you. They're going to act like a martyr. They're going to act like they're doing their best, but everyone else that is around them isn't holding up their end of the bargain, so it's all just on their shoulders. And they are just really always needing to seek that validation and try to, boost their own self-esteem by showing everyone how much they are doing for them. And of course, there are many other signs that I haven't listed here. And usually we can just feel it in our heart. We just have that sense that there is this negativity around us. And when it's something that we perceive, it's really something that we should not ignore, because spending time or spending too much time with energy vampires can really make us sick, because they can be a source of chronic stress, especially if they are someone we can't avoid. It can affect us way more than we realize, because again, in a lot of cases, we are so used to the behavior that we aren't really seeing the damage it is doing to our mental and physical health anymore. We just kind of accept it because we feel like there's nothing that we can do about it. But I want to make clear that even though it's true that in most cases we can't outright change someone else's behavior, we can still be empowered. There are still steps that we can take that are self-protective, and we may feel weird or guilty taking these steps if we've allowed the behavior to go on for a long time without really openly opposing it or reacting to it negatively. But please still keep in mind that we reserve the right to change our approach and our response at any time that we choose to. It does not matter if a precedent has been set. We do get to set the rules when it comes to ourselves and what we decide to do or not do. And so I want to hop right into what we can do to protect our energy from these types of people, but I want to quickly first touch upon why people may be like this in the first place, only because I get this question a lot. And unfortunately, there's really not a cookie cutter answer, because there are a lot of things that can really be at play, and each situation is really different. And sadly, it is oftentimes simply the magnitude of the pain or the insecurity that that person feels inside, and they are really just trying to attempt to heal, or to at least dilute their inner suffering in a lot of cases. It could also be unhealed trauma, or it could be a situation where this person is just so unhappy with their own life that the negativity has just become so natural to them. It's their natural state of being. I always think of that Saturday Night Live skit, Debbie Downer, where it's just habitual for that person to think negatively of every single situation. And I know we all know people like that. And sometimes it really is because their own life has been so negative. I used to know someone that was just like Debbie Downer, and it was fascinating, really, that they were able to always find the bad in everything. And it was because, there were so many things that she had perceived to be bad that happened to her over the years, and she just learned to expect it, and then it just kind of leaked into her relationships. Other times, People are just simply mean and manipulative by nature, or they feel entitled, or they don't really care that they are making people unhappy. They don't really care how they are making people feel whatsoever. And this behavior can sometimes come from underlying conditions that really have an emphasis on a need to be the center of attention. And that's what it is a lot of times, that need to be the center of attention. And in some cases, it can even be linked to personality disorders, especially those that are characterized by dramatic or overly emotional or erratic thinking, or even sometimes not necessarily a full personality disorder, but aligning with some of the criteria from these disorders. It can also be, like we brought up, a codependency issue where there's just an excessive reliance on other people to feel good about themselves or their own lives. And sometimes it's just a case of having low emotional intelligence. So there is the possibility that they know exactly what they are doing, but also the possibility that they have zero awareness of the negative effect that they are having on other people whatsoever. And so, as you can see, there are just so many different reasons why someone could become an energy vampire. And also, there's the difference of really having the knowledge that they are, really an energy vampire, and just that complete unawareness. And I also want to point out that if you happen to be a highly empathetic, compassionate, and caring person, it's very likely that you tend to attract these types of energy vampires in your life because you are able to fill a void for them. You are the most appealing type of person that they can find. And again, I'm not saying that it is definitely intentional, and I'm certainly not saying that we should be less empathetic or kind. It's just that we can't be the solution to everyone's problem or everybody's dumping bag. We have to protect our own energy, or we are going to start to feel these same negative emotions. So let's go ahead and talk about what we can do. So the first thing is that we can start to set clear boundaries. And I know that setting boundaries is a lot easier said than done, but it is in fact doable. It starts with being honest with ourselves about what we can withstand and how much time we are willing to spend with that person. Now, this might mean that we are going to have to limit our time with people and learn to say no sometimes. We have to be careful not to send mixed signals. And of course, we want to do this in the most kind way possible, but we simply have to stop making ourselves available at all hours, at all times for these people. We have to know ahead of time what we are and what we are not comfortable with, so we have answers on the ready. So if boundaries are something that you struggle with, it's actually something I made another full video about. It's called The Complete Guide to Emotional Boundaries, and I will also link that down in the description box if you are watching this podcast through YouTube. And if you're listening to the podcast on any other platform, just simply go to the Nina Lavon YouTube channel and look up Emotional Boundaries, and it will pop right up. And this is something that you can learn as a skill, and if you do, it will totally change your life for the positive. I know firsthand emotional boundaries was something that I definitely struggled with in the past. So check that out if that's something that you struggle with also. The second thing that we can do is to adjust our expectations. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that if we are constantly exhausted because we keep on giving and giving and tolerating what other people dish out, and also we keep getting disappointed because our needs are never met, guess what? We have to get real about the capabilities of this person and the likelihood that this relationship is always going to be pretty much one-sided. If we know that they are not interested in listening to us or our point of view, then we need to start avoiding sharing all these details about our life with them and giving them free access to our emotions. We can share if we want to, but we have to know that any expectation that we have from doing so will likely result in nothing. It is what it is. And in situations when they start to complain about their life or politics or anything else, that tends to be a repeated topic or a repeated complaint. Simply stay neutral and listen if you can, but do not offer any emotional advice. You are not going to change their mind, and they are not going to change their behavior in most cases. They are certainly not going to take our advice. We've seen this happen over and over, so we have to stop trying to fix them and to stop trying to fix the situation or fix their point of view. Their point of view is their point of view. We can share ours, but we can't have expectations of changing theirs. They are not coming to us for solutions to their problems. So we can save a lot of energy by not trying to put the effort into solution finding, because that is not why they are coming to us in the first place. The third thing that we can do is to learn to protect our personal space and our personal energy. So our time, our energy, our space, these are all things that we need to safeguard. We do not have to answer every phone call or text immediately. We can't be at the beck and call of other people all the time. It is overwhelming, it is exhausting, and we are just teaching them to continue on with this behavior if we always respond right away. So instead, we need to get into the habit of getting back to them when we really do have the energy to spare. And we can even explain to them that we were busy or we were too tired, and send a clear signal that we have other things going on. And hopefully in time they will realize that we have limited energy to give to them, and that they are going to need to go somewhere else or to move on if they are not getting what they need from us, or at least, tone it down if they are not getting what they need from us. And usually that's what happens. If they start getting that signal that their needs aren't going to be met by doing what they usually do, they're going to go on another avenue, or they're going to stop trying. Another thing that we can do is to try not to engage. So even though we feel the need to be polite, we don't want to feed the conversation by asking more questions unless we want the conversation to keep getting worse and potentially take a very negative turn. If it does get to that point, we need to show them that we are disconnecting with a facial reaction that shows our disapproval or our disinterest when the conversation becomes negative. They want the reaction and they want the conversation to escalate because they want to either, again, dump off their negative emotions, or they want us to suffer also. So don't give them the response that they are seeking. Disengage or try to change the conversation to something lighter, something that you would actually enjoy talking about. But don't initiate conversations that you know are going to turn ugly, especially hot button issues like politics or religion, or talking about a family member that always sets them off. Avoid these issues. Do yourself a favor. You are going to gain nothing from engaging in these conversations. We have to learn not to argue or contradict them. Even when we are tempted to do so, we have to understand that we cannot change other people unless they change themselves first, or that they want to be changed. Another tactic we can try is not overreacting. And again, I know that this one is also easier said than done. But again, this is exactly what they are looking for. And if you give them what they want, they are simply going to be, doing this again because we are reinforcing their behavior. So instead, try to stay calm, try to stay neutral when they are being over dramatic or angry. This is something that I find is very, very effective. Now, Keep in mind that you can be upset by what they are saying, but you have to determine if it's worth it to show that you are upset in the moment, because usually that just drags out the conversation. So do you want to drag out this conversation when we know that nothing positive is going to come out of it? Up to you. But sometimes it's better to work through these feelings when you are not around them. So it's not like we want to push these feelings away. We have these emotions, we have this reaction, and it's valid. We need to deal with it, but maybe we don't want to deal with it in front of them. So sometimes it is a good tactic to pretend that we really don't care that much. It doesn't mean that we don't care, but they don't always need to know that. Another strategy, and something important in general, is to learn to say no and to do it as nicely as possible. So many times we don't say no because we feel guilty or we feel obligated, and we put other people's feelings in front of ours. And this is especially problematic because they are not doing the same for you. So you both are putting their feelings and desires first. So you can see how this can be problematic. There is nothing fair or healthy in this situation. And remember, you do not have to be unkind when you are saying no. I am not comfortable being unkind either. And just know that you don't have to be. And in fact, it's better that you aren't, and you can be completely loving and gentle and compassionate, yet still stand up for what you want and what you believe in, and to reinforce your boundaries. And I know that being assertive can be challenging if you aren't used to it, but it's definitely a skill that can be developed. And that is something else that I have a video about that I will also link in the description box below if you're on YouTube. And again, you can just look up on YouTube, Nina Lavon, and assertiveness, and that video will come up as well. But just remember that the more authentic you are with your own choices, and the more that you take control over your own life and your own time, the happier you are going to be in the long run. Something else that we need to do is to release the negative energy, to release the negativity. Remember that if they are really just pouring this negativity on you, it really needs an outlet. You need to get rid of it. So you can do something like journaling or exercise or going out in nature or talking to a friend or seeing a therapist if it's to the point where this is just not something that you can deal with anymore. But find effective strategies to release these negative thoughts and emotions and all this negative energy. Every person is different, so it's going to be different what is effective for us, but find what works for you. And remember also that we have to nurture ourselves. We have to build ourselves back up whenever we're experiencing something that is so taxing on our emotions and our energy and our time and any other resources. It's important that we really increase self-care at this time. We need to, again, build ourselves back up and meet our own needs and make sure that we are taking care of ourselves and truly nurturing ourselves. And the last thing that we can do is to simply avoid these people when possible, whenever we need to take a break. And I know it's not always possible, but when it is a pretty simple and straightforward technique that can become necessary for self-preservation sometimes. Remember, it's not a solution and it's not going to permanently fix the problem, but it can give you a break, and sometimes it is simply a necessity. And in extreme circumstances, and again, this is a last resort, we need to cut off contact, at least for a while, if the relationship is becoming detrimental to our own health and our own happiness. When this happens, we need to put our mental health and our safety first and make those difficult decisions regarding who we choose to surround ourselves with on a regular basis. So it may just be, a temporary break to figure out what's going on, and in extreme circumstances, then, sometimes we need to take a bigger break. but that is a last resort, and oftentimes these other solutions are effective enough that we don't need to get to that point. Because if we really care about someone, we don't want to cut them out of our life. We need to reconfigure the relationship, and that's always what we are aiming to do if and when it is in any way possible. Please note also that whenever we can, showing compassion to these energy vampires or trying to understand where they are coming from can make them more bearable and possibly reduce our own suffering dramatically. And in some cases, definitely not all, but in some cases, energy vampires really are well-meaning people who are just overbearing or starved for love or affection or attention or validation. And just knowing that can be helpful. All behavior comes from somewhere. Needy people are needy for a reason. And so having that compassion can be very helpful. But again, we have to balance that. Being compassionate does not mean that their needs come before ours. And it doesn't mean that it's our job to fix these people or to constantly give in to them. Everything I said earlier still applies, but sometimes when we approach the situation from an angle of sympathy and from love, it can make the whole process easier. So I would love to know, what are your experiences with energy vampires? Is this something that you are dealing with right now, or is this something that you've dealt with successfully in the past? And if so, I would love to hear what techniques were effective for you. Also, please don't hesitate to go ahead and send in your topic requests. This podcast today was a result of topic requests, so please feel free to reach out to me at nina.lavonne@gmail.com. That is spelled nena.lavonne@gmail. You can also find me on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is @NinaLavonne. But definitely keep the topic requests and the questions coming, because it helps me to know what type of content you find the most valuable and the most helpful. And that's definitely how I want to aim what we talk about. So I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. I truly hope that our conversation today was insightful and helpful, and that your experiences with energy vampires do dissipate, and that you are able to cope and to set effective boundaries in your life. So with that being said, I hope the rest of your day is extraordinary, and I look forward to talking to you next time. Have an amazing day, guys. Take care.